I suggest that everybody speak very short, just the idea, not elaborated, descriptive, how do you say, analysis, etc., etc. Just the idea. What is your idea about this? The G20 summit and global crisis. What do you think? And in short, between 5 to 3 minutes maximum, because we don't have much time. So, Manoranjan Mohanty, time is yours.
Hello, greetings from New Delhi. I'm unable to join you personally. Sorry about that. I'll straight go to your questions. And my first point is that, G20 was an initiative of G7, particularly from 2008 onwards. And now my feeling is that the struggle to bring the G77 or developing countries perspective continues very, very clearly. And the Bali summit also demonstrated it. The Indonesian president did recall the Bandung conference and the legacy, but the Bali declaration did not make any mention of the main points of the Bandung legacy or the Bandung conference. And that was quite a pointer to the kind of crisis we see in the modern world. And therefore, we have to constantly battle to bring in the developing countries' perspective, the Bandung perspective, the G77 perspective to the G20 conference. Remember, it's a demonstration of the unequal world. G20 is a body of 19 major economies plus EU. So that's my first point. Therefore, and I must say that the Indonesian president did try to bring in that perspective. And in India, where now the next G20 meeting is scheduled to take place in September, and our country is full of G20 discourse every day, every week, certainly, we have a major G20, either a Sherpa track meeting or a ministers meeting or a committee meeting. So, and some of these go back to earlier summits. Some started during the last 2 years, but now, some 200 meetings are taking place in India. That's my first point. The second point is that the identification of the crisis, very well enumerated in the Bali Declaration, in the Indonesian summit, Bali summit, was still focusing on three things. Despite the challenge of the pandemic and the war in Ukraine, or the hunger and unemployment, which were precipitated further as a result of the pandemic and then the war, what the focus was on. And I'm afraid the same focus is continuing in the Indian case also. How to revive growth. Indeed, growth is important, but the great inequalities which got exposed during the pandemic and further exposed in course of the last 1 year of the war, pandemic and the war and the cumulative effect of the global economic crisis resulting from the pandemic and now the war, both pandemic and the war, they are not at the center. In other words, inequalities, hunger, unemployment, the common people's problems, common people's serious problems, they are not at the center. I think uh, President Widodo did try, but I think the consensus framework of G20, as reflected in the declaration, still has the focus on this, even though there are 2-3 paragraphs, no doubt about the problems that common people faced, and so on. But still, the focus was on growth, and the second point of the focus, which is getting a even greater attention in the Indian case, is the digital economy, digital transformation of the world. Please remember the focus on growth and in the digital framework, the so-called fourth industrial revolution framework, the AI, the artificial intelligence focused framework, they are so clearly leading to greater inequalities, greater divides in the world, that we have to be very, very careful. I can go on mentioning these problems, but what is our perspective? Our perspective, please recollect how to gain independence and sovereignty and consolidate that, how to establish a world of equality and solidarity among nations and peoples of the world. So independence, sovereignty, equality, number 2. Number 3, peace and disarmament, very important. Number 4, particularly today in the face of the climate crisis, sustainability. And here sustainability is not just resource sustainability or intergenerational sustainability. It is sustainability for the entire earth and all its beings, all its creations. And finally, democracy and human rights. I think all of us, and Darvish particularly, sums up the perspective very well in these words. And from this, when you look at the G20 agenda, whether in Bali or now in New Delhi, the September meeting will be in New Delhi, though about 200 meetings are taking place. Right now, the tourism meeting is taking place in Gujarat. And in the first week of March, the foreign ministers meeting is going to take place here in Delhi. And last week, there was the digital representatives of the digital economy met in Bangalore. Like that, 200, some 200 meetings are taking place. But this perspective, the Bandung spirit perspective, is lacking. I'm sad to say that our present government is not only not enthusiastic about mentioning Bandung and Bandung legacy, but is trying to distance itself from the Bandung legacy. Though it did convene a conference of the Global South a few days ago. Some 150 countries were represented online in the Global South conference addressed by our Prime Minister. So some of the genuine problems of the Global South did come up, but not the focus on hunger, unemployment, enlarged inequalities progressively being enlarged, and so on. And the Oxfam Global Inequality Report presented in the World Economic Forum a few days ago, in the last week of January, exposes the increasing inequalities in the world today. I would conclude by saying that, the Indonesian summit had very well focused on, with the slogan, recover together, recover stronger, I think, and that got elaborated very well in course of the conference, and the declaration in many parts does address that quite adequately. And the Indian statement is very visionary, really. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, and Vasudha means earth. the whole earth is a family, not just the world, but the earth with all its beings, all life systems, human and other life systems. They are all interdependent, and they are the family in the earth level. This is a Vedic, ancient Indian concept. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The earth is a family, the world is a family. And one earth, one family, one future is the logo call, like the Recover Together and Recover Stronger. But to make it, and the Prime Minister said, G20 in India has to be decisive, ambitious, and action-oriented. Very, very well put. Very well put. But unless we refocus on the values of equality and solidarity, independence and sovereignty, peace and disarmament, sustainability, and democracy and human rights, particularly rights of the oppressed people, poor people, I think the G7 agenda will continue to prevail. I do hope that the G20 will go beyond the G7 agenda, the developed industrial countries agenda. Unfortunately, the strong leaders of China and India, both trying to have high growth and global prestige, are so focused on the same developed countries agenda that Bandung legacy has to be pushed by the whole developing countries world, the global south. Only then the G20 will become more than G7, and it will combine the Bandung legacy with the G77, which is now more than 120 countries, G77 agenda. Therefore, our goals should be how to address these problems, not just by growth and digital transformation, but to address climate change, hunger, unemployment, and a kind of economic growth that addresses inequality, hunger, and unemployment. Not any economic growth, a particular kind of economic growth. For that, I think we have to have sustained efforts to decolonize, democratize, and restructure the global political economy. That is the Bandung Spirit agenda. Global restructuring by continuing decolonization, fighting hegemonies of all kinds, and advancing democratization, and further advancing restructuring of the world. Only then the G7 agenda will be different from, the G20 agenda will be different from the G7 agenda, and it will be closer to the Bandung Spirit agenda. Thank you very much.
Thank you.